Welcome to the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers Spotlight on the Issues webinar series. I'm your host, Jason Modulin, the president of the Alliance. It's my honor to be with you today. The Texas Alliance of Energy Producers represents over 2,600 individuals and member companies that are focused on advancing independent operators and the standards of the oil and gas industry. Through advocacy for smart energy and environmental policy, effective communications, and cost-saving programs, the Alliance has delivered for our members for over 90 years. Founded in 1930 in Wichita Falls as the North Texas Oil and Gas Association, we merged with the West Central Texas Oil and Gas Association from Abilene in 2000 and expanded our focus statewide, adding members from across the state. While we celebrate our past, we are firmly focused on the future, delivering solutions for Texas independent operators. A special thanks to our President's Forum sponsors, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, and Marathon Oil for making these events possible. I would now like to call on our board chairman, Cy Wagner, to get us started. She's a dynamic leader, a second-generation oil producer, an Aggie petroleum engineer who is at the helm of her family's 40-year oil and gas business in Fort Worth. Cy, would you like to make a few remarks?
Thank you, Jason. On behalf of the board and the membership of the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers, I'd like to welcome everyone, and especially you, Senator. As an independent operator myself, on behalf of all the members of our organization that work here to fuel our economy in Texas and the world, thank you for your efforts on our behalf. As a fourth-generation farmer and rancher from Throckmorton County, I thank you for your work in representing my home during your years in the House, too. The Alliance is proud to work with you to represent the small independent operators, service companies, as well as the large publicly traded entities that our membership entails. We represent the voice of the oil and gas industry in Texas, and we appreciate your inclusion of our organization in your efforts of sound science-based regulation and policy for our industry. Thanks for being here today. Everyone, please continue to join in. We're still in a COVID crisis, and we're going to continue to host great events. As soon as we can get in person, we will, but stay tuned with us here. And Jason and staff, thanks for your work in getting these events online. We sure appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Cy, for your leadership, and thanks to our many board members that were able to join today. I also saw Judy Stark with the Panhandle Producers and Royalty Owners Association. Judy, thank you very much for joining us today. Our guest today is Senator Drew Springer. A lifelong conservative Christian, Senator Springer fights to preserve traditional Texas values, promotes economic development, and undo burdensome regulations. Ever a fighter for the U.S. Constitution, he is a champion for taxpayers, fights for pro-life legislation, and defends the Second Amendment. He was consistently ranked among the top conservatives during his tenure in the Texas House of Representatives. Drew grew up in Weatherford, where he attended Weatherford High School, went on to Weatherford College, and then to the University of North Texas, where he was a letterman and received his accounting degree. He spent 15 years working for a Texas railcar company, where he was an accountant, a leasing VP, and president of 3 divisions. He left to join his father's financial services company, where he specialized in agriculture managed futures for the last 16 years and now works in securities. Drew and his wife of 29 years, Lydia, reside in Munster, Texas, where they are blessed to have raised 3 children, welcomed their first grandson just this past year, and the family are active members of Sacred Heart Catholic Church. Drew has also been a volunteer fireman for 15 years. I'll remind everyone, if you'd like to submit a question to Senator Springer, please utilize the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. We will go till about 12:30 and wrap up with a few audience questions. Senator Springer, welcome. How are you doing today? And I don't see video for you if
okay,
the video is working.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Absolutely.
Okay.
Can't see you.
All right. Let me, there it goes. It said,
there you are.
I guess a minute ago, y'all disabled it because nobody wanted me to see me get prepped, I guess.
It's very high-end production here. So thank you very much for being with us.
Hey, my pleasure. So we're good.
Well,
now I can see a little bit better what my background looks like. I'll try to get more in the frame here.
Well, it's great to see you. Many of our members hail from District 30, and some were able to meet you when you campaigned in Wichita Falls with Chairman James Frank this past fall. But we had lots of folks request that we get you on. So tell us a little bit about, you've moved over from the House to the Senate, about your priorities for the 87th legislature.
Hey, and it's great to be on with you guys. Appreciate everything y'all are doing. Not only for the Texas economy, but America working to make us energy independent. Couldn't be on with a better group of folks. But no, my priorities coming into this session. We've obviously got to work through a tough budget, although, we got good news on that. So it's a little bit better than what we thought. We're going to make sure we continue to have an educated workforce that's ready to go to work for you guys and gals out there. Redistricting you'll start hearing a little bit of those. There's a little bit of inside baseball in that, but sadly though, rural Texas continues to lose representation as folks move to the metroplex. But mine continued to be look at how can we reduce the tax load on property taxes. It still continues to be a big step. Last session, we put a stop on the growth of it without voter approval. But I can tell you, folks are still, especially homeowners and truthfully, probably most business owners, property taxes still continue to be too big of a burden upon them. And so we need to look at more consumption taxes, how to have a fair tax base that everybody pays, a reasonable amount as we go forward. We're going to continue to work on our, Second Amendment, pro-life, the conservative things that are in this district. Senate District 30, a little different than House District 68. It's got some more suburban growth in that Parker County area, especially where I grew up and was raised. East Parker County has changed dramatically. And then also you've got North Denton and the Collin County areas, and Grayson County seeing growth over there as well. But we, I think the one thing that I really brought into coming into the Senate was, somebody who understands the rural aspect. So, whether you're in Archer County, Clay County, Palo Pinto, Erath, or any of those, knowing that I don't have to get up to speed on those issues. And so knowing that you're going to have somebody that's not going to forget about the little guys out there.
Absolutely. You had a big House district. It was 22 counties.
22 counties, 25,000 square miles. Yeah. About 10% of the landmass of Texas.
That's phenomenal. Yeah. COVID remains an economic and health challenge for all of Texas. And you ran a spirited campaign on getting the legislature more involved in addressing some of these lockdowns from this past year. Can you talk about your approach and some of the flexibility you would like to see, particularly in rural Texas?
Absolutely. I mean, look, we are not a one size fits all state. We all know that. The issues in El Paso are vastly different than the issues in Munster, Texas. Especially early on in this pandemic, I think, you've got to be able to treat hotspots properly. But when we're already sort of social distance out in the country, we don't need overburdensome regulations. Whether it's, the cafe that has a tough time operating at 25%, from that standpoint, looking at, new tradition or new agriculture would be our wineries and things. You can go out and enjoy a glass of Texas wine, sit outside, and the fact that they were shut down was just wrong. And so, we need to have, and so my approach is to, and the next time we have a pandemic, and then wrapping up on this one is, look, the legislature should be involved in what those rules are. They shouldn't just be the governor. Governor has great intention, good heart, but he missed some of the things that affect rural Texas in those regards. And so, we want to make sure that those are in. And I always say, it's like I had a lady who owns a little shop in Graham, Texas. Sold fire retardant clothing, steel toe boots, little boutique for ladies. She got closed down, but Walmart down the street stayed open to compete against her, and that was just wrong. Right. And so we need to make sure small businesses are protected.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on the tax system earlier in the House. You were a champion for addressing our tax system, making it more fair and reducing the burden of property taxes. Last session, of course, it was a monumental effort to compress school taxes. What are you working on this session? You touched on a consumption tax, but what are you working on this session?
Mine is that we do have some tweaks we need to do to SB2. But what I'm looking for in there is what the Republican Party platform has called for. I think a lot of us are looking at is we need to be more into consumption. If that can buy down or eliminate the M&O property taxes for schools, For most people, that's roughly 50% of your tax bill. If we could get rid of all of that or half of that, that'd be a huge step forward. I tell everybody, that doesn't realize how many things we don't charge sales tax on. Cookies, cakes, donuts, bottled water. There's $600 million there, and the list goes on. It's also an opportunity for us to realize that technology has changed things, and while that's being accepted and can be good for some folks, it doesn't mean that it's a sin to burn fossil fuels in a car. And so I think Teslas and Toyota Priuses need to pay their fair share of road taxes. If they did that, we could use those dollars to buy down our property taxes for everybody. And that just makes it fair. A Ford Fusion pays $225 a year in gas taxes for the roads and schools. I think Tesla ought to pay the same thing.
Yes, sir. Those vehicles are also just as heavy as some of the trucks on the road. So that's great to hear that effort. You've always had a great staff since you came into the House. Travis McCormick, now Chief of Staff for Commissioner Wayne Christian, and new House member J.C. Jaton from the Fort Bend area served on your staff. You moved to the Senate and you continued that tradition, kind of building out a great new team. So tell us about that.
Sure, I do. For those who've worked with my office in the past, Jonathan Mathers, who'd been my chief of staff for 6 years, came over. He's now going to be my legislative director. Jonathan has just a world of expertise in the policy field, loves to dive into it. Somebody who'd been very active in the Senate for a long time. In fact, some of the folks on this call may have worked with him. He used to staff for Senator Estes, and that's Terry Franks, who's my new chief of staff. Terry had also worked for Dan Patrick and a couple other senators as well along the way. And so, in fact, his last stint probably in the Capitol was chief of staff for Jason Isaac, who's active with TPPF and their energy policies. Cassidy Riza came in to me right after last session. She's out of Clarendon, understands rural Texas, Texas Tech graduate. And then Murphy McCullough has been brought on for communications and policy as well, and has she's worked for Senator Bonin. She'd worked for Congressman John Carter, so she understands the process of what we're doing. And if you make it down here, we've got a handful of interns that are floating around, but and working on that.
Well, good, yeah, and great team. We love working with Terry and Murphy and Jonathan and Cassidy. So thank you. Committee assignments came out, and we were excited to see Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick appoint you to the Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs Committee. The Alliance has worked with Senator Perry and members of that committee to find ways to incentivize and promote the recycling of water in the oil field and explore ways to harness produced water for beneficial use outside of industrial applications. Certainly to the west of your district, it gets very drought prone, but we've seen that in Wichita Falls as well. Texas has been a leader in this space, testing recycled water on cotton crops, and we've seen new markets and companies emerge, not led by government mandates, but because of the innovation and investment by private companies. Can you tell us about your priorities on water and kind of what you're hoping to see, and hopefully we can continue to work with you on oil field recycling of water?
No, and it's exciting to hear what you guys are doing in that. Select Energy, based out of Gainesville, does a lot of work in the water space, and so John Schmitz and Cody Ortowski, good friends of mine, and I know they're just a handful of the folks, or scores of folks that are working on this issue. It needs to be a priority for the state. We need to make sure that we're incentivizing it. It's just like anything else we incentivize. If we're going to spend $40 million bringing Toyota to come in and bring all these jobs, spending money to make sure that we have water that continues to let these folks have a drink when they move here from California makes sense for me as well. Making sure we continue, though, to honor the right of capture in our water space. And so, I'm excited to work on that. The other piece of that in the committee, our traditional agriculture is always a big thing for me, making sure we protect that. There's a lot of new things coming out there, and that's great. But at the end of the day, it's our cattle cutting and corn guys that are feeding, clothing Texans in the world, and we need to make sure they're protected in there. You know, then you get some of the fun stuff in that rural affairs. Probably most of the folks on this call are big hunters and fishermen, and so Texas Park and Wildlife is under there, and so our game wardens and just preservation of Texas's natural game resources.
Well, absolutely. And you kind of teased it a little bit on our next question, property rights, which are fundamental in Texas. For the past several sessions, the legislature and interested parties have wrestled with how to strengthen our property rights while still allowing for infrastructure to be built in this fast growth state. The Alliance has worked with the Coalition for Critical Infrastructure to develop a serious proposal over the past year to address specific complaints by landowner groups. We want to compensate property owners fairly and fully for the value of their property, but not raise legal and litigation costs. And you've certainly been a part of that. You've been chairman of the Agriculture Committee in the House. What are your priorities on eminent domain, and how can we get there this session where we've fallen short the past couple sessions?
No, you're exactly right, and we need to get this addressed. It's one of those that I think that 95% of everybody involved in this wants to find a good, reasonable solution to this. They want to protect that landowner's rights. They want to protect that old heritage barn or whatever comes through. If it's a lift station, where can it be put that doesn't interfere with either the aesthetics or the functioning of a farm? And the producers all understand that. And I think that I sat down with some of the oil and gas guys back in 2 years ago and said, look, we've got to come up with a solution to this. And while we're looking into the landowners' rights, at the same time, it can be a win-win, because what we see is the litigation problems that stops us from advancing that infrastructure from going in. And if we could shave that process to where you could be litigated for 5 years, down to where you can start putting pipe in the ground in 12 to 24 months, while honoring and paying and doing the right thing by landowners, that's a win-win situation. When we can start moving our products faster and create that. And that's what I'm looking for. I think it's I know Dwayne Burns had filed a couple bills. I think 912 is the one that we were liking in this sort of balanced approach to it. But that's going to be my commitment, is making sure that we find something that works for everybody. It can't be one-sided. Those things are always tough to pass. And I got to tell you, for my old House district and even the Senate district, agriculture and energy are hand in hand. They're the two biggest drivers for these communities. And so, they've got to be able to work together to come up with a reasonable solution.
Well, that's absolutely right. A number of our board members are landowners and operators as well. And so they find themselves on both sides of this issue frequently. And we want to be at the table and be supportive of your efforts this session to kind of land the plane and get that done. The Alliance is also supporting efforts to expand rural broadband access. Can you tell us about your efforts there?
I can tell you, even during this last interim before getting elected to the Senate, when the USF fund was running out of money because big telecom changed the way they did their billing, Charles Perry and I were screaming at the PUC to fix that. And sadly, they sort of hid behind, it looks like it's a new tax. I adamantly disagree with it. I think, one, for baseline, we either have to make sure that is reestablished in there, or we more than likely need to come out and say, look, fixed landlines is not where a real challenge is in rural Texas anymore. It is broadband and cell phone towers. And so, we've got fairly decent cell phone. We could use it a little better when I'm driving out to Lubbock every now and then. But, for the most part, we're there. We've got to get that rural broadband. With the pandemic, we have seen the challenges and the disconnect between rural Texas kids trying to learn educational online, and somebody who sits down in Dallas and has 1 gig fiber to the home. And it's just not fair for our rural kids not to get that. It is, and I've said it on the trail, it is the 20th century's electrification is the 21st century's broadband initiative. It's the way we run our companies. It's the way we educate our kids. it's the way we entertain ourselves too. And so it's dramatically important that we're able to do it. Problem is the pandemic stopped us from doing a lot of the interim work on it. But I know, working with Senator Perry, and Senator Nichols, we're gonna come up with something that works in that realm. I know some of the guys in the House are working on the same thing as well. I think for us the rural legislators, it's a top priority, and we're willing to push all of our emphasis on this issue to make sure that it gets done.
Oh, that's perfect. And we had two notes in the chat. That was probably Boaz on the square and Graham. Good shop, and several of our members shop there. So thanks for plugging them. And then Bert Holmquist asked about, is it 902 by Representative Burns, House Bill 902? I assume that's the one you're talking about.
I thought it was 912, but I apologize for not having it sit right in front of me, but it may be on there. I know that the folks, Todd Staples, had sent one over on that one.
Yeah.
So I was thinking that was it. But look,
we'll make sure we get you that
I know
drafted.
that, we need to make sure we have it, look forward to working with Senator Colcourse, who's carried that in the past, and making sure that, look, we've got to find a fair and balanced. I know that Charles Schwartner is looking to file several. I think they're single shots. They don't address the whole issue, is what we're looking for. I do see 902 popping up there, so I apologize. Sometimes my dyslexia or numbers, since for an accountant, I always used to get laughed at about that. They go, for a guy who works your numbers, you're terrible with them sometimes.
Well, and hopefully that's some bright spot this session, is that instead of 10,000 bills, it's only 7,000 bills. So
yeah, exactly.
Cut it down a little bit. And as I mentioned before, if anyone has any questions, please put it in the chat feature. Last week we had a change in administration in Washington D.C. and right off the bat, oil and gas was in the crosshairs. We're anticipating a lot of new regulations, limitations, and mandates, unfortunately, to make us look more like California and New York. So what are your thoughts on Texas pushing back, and how can the Texas Senate continue to kind of assert our sovereignty on some of these issues?
We have to do, I guess I had 4 years with the Obama administration. So we were used to making sure we gave the firepower to the Attorney General's office to go over and sue the administration when they violate the Constitution, when they violate the laws. We saw it with Waters of the World. We saw it with so many different things that they're doing. And here they go again, in killing the Keystone Pipeline, killing tens of thousands of jobs, whether it's just direct jobs or indirect jobs for Americans at this time. It just doesn't make sense. And so, we've got to continue to push back and fight when we see those. I can tell you, probably a lot of the folks on this call as well, not only just in our business, but just in our personal side of things. We're talking about firearm sanctuary state and saying, look, if the feds overreach in those, we're going to tell them that you guys treat it like marijuana in Colorado. You guys got to come in and enforce the laws. We're not going to do those. We're not going to take Texans' rights away from them. But we've got to find ways of strengthening it, being able to export LNG and those type of things. We are on a great trajectory. And I know I don't have to explain to the folks on this call, when they talk green energy, it still takes an awful lot of fossil fuels and everything to make those things go. And sometimes they don't capture all the things that they have left over afterwards. And we just need to make sure everybody fully understands, what's right and what's fair.
That's absolutely the case. And you and your colleagues have also done a phenomenal job of making sure that we've got strong regulators at the Railroad Commission and at TCEQ that can step in and be that good, strong regulatory presence, so that EPA or others in DC don't get any ideas about expanding down here. And great plug on liquefied natural gas as well. They continue to see advancement there from Corpus Christi over to Beaumont with expansion.
That's right.
Open it up again for any questions, but I'll give you kind of the last word, Senator. What are your closing thoughts for our members and 2021, kind of your outlook for this year moving forward?
Now, look, I mean, we are showing, the rest of the country and the rest of the world, what a real economy looks like when it's balanced. We allow people to go to work. We don't overregulate them. We get government out of the way. We make sure everybody stays safe, and we've got to continue to press that forward. If I represent you in the Senate, then it's an absolute honor. My office is always open to you guys. Email, call, let us know what those issues are. And I'll say that, for the other senators as well, and my other colleagues in the House, we want to hear from you guys. Jason does a phenomenal job with the Alliance and representing those. But, we like to hear firsthand from our constituents. And so don't be shy. You'd be shocked at how few people actually do reach out to us on issues that are important to keep their business going. We wouldn't understand it otherwise. And so I look forward to the good things that you guys are working on. Whether it's making sure, you talked about. I said fund the Attorney General's office, but it's also making sure the Railroad Commission is properly funded. It was great to see Jim Wright win that race. While everybody was trying to turn Texas blue, Texas pushed back on that. We realized we are the beacon for the rest of the world, and we don't have to worry about making Texas great. Texas already is great. We just need to keep it great and keep Washington out of it to try to ruin it for us.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. And Joanne Baker in our Wichita Falls office has always found Senate District 30's office has been incredibly helpful to the constituents in Wichita Falls and surrounding areas. And so we greatly appreciate you continuing to have an office there and help our folks in that area. Get one more question here.
And I got to say, and on that is, look, we also partner up in Wichita Falls. I mean, James Frank and I work so closely together. We were talking together last night on the phone about getting together tonight to recap on working on stuff. And that's the thing. We have a great partnership, and that helps in these areas. So hats off to James. He really does a great job for his House District 69.
Yes, sir. Well, Senator, it's always great to talk to you. I've always enjoyed helping the Drew Caucus along, and you're doing a phenomenal job. And thank you for the plug also on the contact information. We will make sure that we get that out to our members to reach out to you directly and make sure that they have your information and continue that communication and dialogue. But thanks for all you're doing for Texas. It's challenging times right now, but we're so appreciative of folks that step up to serve.
All right. Thanks,
we'll
guys.
let you get to the floor.
Day.
Thank you, Senator. Have a good one.
All right. Bye.
Well, Senator Springer can be found on the web at springerfortexas.com and on social media. And we will make sure that you also have his contact information to his office so that you can reach out with any questions or concerns. And many thanks again to our President's Forum sponsors, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, and Marathon Oil. If you are interested in sponsoring future events, we want to hear from you. Put up my contact information, and then also Tina Hamlin, who can handle sponsorships for our webinars. Thank you for joining us. Please be sure to fill out the exit survey so we can make these events even better. Thanks. Have a great day.